Can we talk about copper?
Copper.
Disintermediation of copper and how, because like copper's really expensive.
Yeah.
So who's getting the money in the journey of copper from it being in the ground to being in my factory, if I'm making something out of copper? Because I seem to remember you've got some stats on that.
Yeah.
So I looked at the data you could see in the paper that told you the international price of copper, and then I sat down and worked out how much I was paying for copper tube in the big box store down in the local high street. And there was a massive difference, and there's nothing more in copper tube than copper. Sometimes it's got a sticker on it, but that's it. So I figured, well, surely it should be about like double the price of copper, triple the price of copper.
Yeah, to cover the
perhaps.
transport.
Yeah, and somebody's got to squeeze into a tube from some sort of billet. And it was between 10 and 20 times more than the price of copper. And that led me to wonder, well, that's quite a lot, isn't it?
Why can't somebody undercut that and say, well, I can make tube cheaper than that?
Yeah, and of course what you have is a bunch of intermediaries in the supply chain that take copper ingots and turn that into copper bar, and then the bar is then supplied to a company that extrudes that bar into tube, and they each step along this way they make a margin, and then eventually it's sold to the retailer.
There's a wholesaler network in between probably too.
Indeed, yes. Yeah. And the retailer then probably doubles the price of the copper tube.
Retailers double the price of everything pretty much, don't they?
So in the end, as a consumer, you're paying a lot of money for copper just because it's in a tubular form. And I chose that because, well, there's very few products which are just such a simple base material. Most things are, are processed and then alloyed, and they're finished and plated and assembled. Copper tubes, none of that. It's just cut to length. Yeah. It would seem milk. Milk is 23p a litre out of the farm, and it costs you £1 in the supermarket. Well, that's 4 times. Well, why is copper 20? So it doesn't seem quite right to me. Something's a bit screwy.
And the profit is being made by the intermediaries rather than the people at the bottom who actually dig up the copper, and the people at the top who
consuming the copper
consume the top. Yeah,
I mean, you say dig up, but the fella's driving some great big machine in a copper mine.
Yeah,
but you're right. The fellas with the yellow hats on aren't making the lion's share of the money, are they?
No.
So take that example now and roll it inside your business. So it's easy to see these intermediaries and supply chain costs outside your business.
But maybe those are genuine costs. I mean, maybe those people really do find it difficult to do each part. So maybe the wholesaler has to double the cost because they've got buildings and websites and admin clerks and to employ. And so, maybe that process really does cost that much, and that's why nobody's undercut it and nobody's selling copper tubing for half the price. So each individual step, they're not greedy because they're competing with people doing the same thing and they've been pushed down to original profit margin. But it's the number of the steps that's the problem.
It goes through lots of niches.
Fantastic. And roll that into your business now. Exactly the same thing
within
in your
the
business.
4 walls of your business.
Within the 4 walls of your business, exactly the same thing is going on.
You have lots of steps.
Lots of steps, and each one having to add a little bit of value.
So sales do the selling, the order comes in, production control has to go to the drawing office, the stores.
Look, if I'm a guy working on the production line, and I'm running out of washers, I've got to tell somebody I'm running out of washers, and I know what I do and how many washers I'm going to need. So I say, I need another 1,000 washers. Fantastic. So I tell somebody, and that person then eventually delivers a message to the stores, who then can check whether they've got the 1,000 washers I need in stores. And if they haven't, well, they'll tell purchasing that they need some washers. Purchasing will then go out to the washer supplier and get a quote for washers, and then perhaps place an order for the washers. The washers then will arrive in Goods Inward. They'll go through Goods Inward inspection to make sure washers came in the bag, and then they'll get put into stores. And then stores can count them, decant the 1,000 that I need, and then have them delivered in a kit to my workstation. Okay?
Quite a lot of steps.
And that's what we're talking about in terms of disintermediation within the business.
Yeah.
We found that everything that landed on the production line had gone through so much cost.
But you have to do all that stuff. You have to keep a track of your stock. You have to have goods inwards inspection because the suppliers can send you any old rubbish. You have to have purchasing. Somebody's got to pay for it and do the ordering. And you have to have all of those things.
Yeah, it seemed a trap. We were stuck being in this chaos with all this logistics and all this cost. It seemed a trap. You know, and after a year, we kind of ended up in a situation where we didn't know what to do because we couldn't carry on like we were, and yet it didn't work.
Can I add something in here?